15 here in the beautiful world of Cuyahoga County and the Public Safety and Justice Affairs Committee. If you would please roll call.
Calling the roll, Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Greenspan.
Here.
Mr. Germana.
Here.
Mr. Hairston.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is in attendance.
Welcome as always, Mr. Miller. Public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one is signed in.
In your package, you'll find the minutes of November 17th meeting. If they're in order, I'll accept the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. 2015-0255.
Resolution number 2015-0255, authorizing a co-location agreement with Chagrin Valley Dispatch Council in the amount not to exceed $3,712,818.95 for sublease of space and equipment in connection with relocation of the Cuyahoga Emergency Communications System Dispatch Center to Chagrin Valley Dispatch Center, located at 88 Center Street, Bedford, for the period 1/1/2016 through 1/14/2026.
Welcome.
Good morning. Good afternoon, I should say.
Good afternoon.
George Taylor, Public Safety and Justice Services, and I'm accompanied by Brandy Carney, also with Public Safety and Justice Services.
And your new title is?
Administrator.
Of Gotham?
Public Safety and Justice Services.
Thank you. Congratulations. I don't think we've seen you since you were appointed to that.
No, thank you, Councilman.
Okay.
And she's doing a fine job.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, George.
You have a handout that was put together to go over the agreement and some of the highlights. Excuse me. The co-location agreement will be between CCOMS and Chagrin Valley Dispatch, which is located in the lower level of the Bedford Hospital. The agreement terms are from the first quarter of 2016 to January 14th of 2026. It's a 10-year term, and if necessary, the agreement can be terminated with a 1-year written notice from either party. CCOMS will remain as a separate entity. They will still operate independently from Chagrin Valley, but they will share space and limited hardware and software. Square footage for what CCOMS will be occupying is 5,948 square feet, and this includes unfinished space that can be used for future growth of the dispatch center. The Chagrin Valley will complete the entire build-out along with all the hardware and software setup. The CCOMS build-out will include 9 dispatch positions, with CCOMS using only 4 of the positions currently. The remaining 5 will be functional but not operational. These 5 positions in the space for the build-out of 8 additional spaces could allow for up to 13 additional dispatch spaces, which could be used for other cities or the Sheriff's Department if needed. The initial CCOMS build-out will include enough space for 6 offices for CCOMS administrative personnel to use. Chagrin Valley will provide 24/7 IT support for the duration of the agreement. Some hardware will be shared with Chagrin Valley, and all CCOMS furniture, hardware, equipment, software, etc., that will be purchased up front by Chagrin Valley will become the property of CCOMS if this agreement is ever terminated. And that's the basis of the agreement minus the financial part, which Brandy Carney is much more versed at than I, and I'll turn it over to her.
Sure. So this agreement does include an initial upfront fixed cost of approximately $1.5 million, as shown on the sheet. That money includes space, the space design and build out for the entire unit, furniture, radio consoles, workstations, hardware, software, CAD, and some other items. Of that cost, $475,000 was approved by this committee from the capital projects account, and the difference would come from the wireless 911 fund. There's an additional annual fixed cost for the first year of $164,200. As noted on your sheet, That includes rent, maintenance, and support for the equipment, included cameras, the IT support, which is 24/7, phones, internet, etc. There additionally are some variable costs that are annual cost, not to exceed $57,000. Those, other than the office supplies, are largely for the radio consoles. Luckily, those will only need to be turned on as they're being used. As George explained, the first year we'll only be using 5 of those. So as more are turned on, those costs can actually be given to the cities as the cities come on and we dispatch for them. So those are, we will unlikely ever reach the $57,000 that we're actually paying out ourselves for that cost.
Okay. If you could start by telling us how the choice was made.
We looked at all the dispatch centers in the county based on what was available at each one, their location, their progress, and some of them were open, some of them weren't, how much space they had, and how much support they could offer us. And our decision was based on those factors.
Okay. The reason I asked that is you're well aware some other dispatches were out there were disappointed that they had not been chosen. So I want to at least get that on the record as to the process and who was involved in the decision making.
Myself, Brandy Carney, Ed Kraus, and Frank Bova.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Ma'am?
Through the chair to Mr. Taylor, just wondering about that little clause that why would they get to keep the equipment if contract is terminated? I know it's a 10-year lease, but.
If the contract's terminated, we get the equipment back.
Okay, so what was that statement? I must have misunderstood.
I may have misstated it or it may have been confusing, but they will buy the equipment, they'll maintain it, and if the contract is terminated, then the equipment that was purchased will come back to us.
Okay, different than what I heard. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Greenspan, Mr. Hairston, and Mr. Miller.
Sure, thank you. So of the general fund money that's coming out, the $414,030, where is that money? Is that coming out in 15? I'm assuming so.
I'm sorry, Councilman, do you mean
the $414,030? That's from the general fund in the third whereas. So it talks about the project being funded. The right one. $2,008,000 from the 911 Wireless Assistance Fund, $475,000 from the EOC Capital Project, and the $414,000 from the general fund.
Okay.
Is that general fund? That's 2015 general fund dollars that are being encumbered for next year? Because I don't know if we're going to be able to get this up and running by your expectation is to get it up and running January 1?
First quarter of 2016. We likely will not be running until February, I would say February or March, but first quarter is the target.
Okay.
So that is 2016 general fund money.
So, okay, so the 414 is 2016 general. On an ongoing basis, it sounded like it was over 200,000 a year, potentially 200,000 between fixed and variable. 57 plus 160, 140, I don't recall the other number.
It's approximately $221,000 per year. There may be some increases because of the phone line costs that we have for some other countywide radio projects that we're keeping, but anywhere from $220 to $250 annually.
And where is that money coming from?
That comes from the general fund. That is general fund money. Right now, the cost, some of the money is general fund and some of it is wireless right now. Right now, we're paying for our rent, our annual rent, our electricity, our phone, and our supplies. All of it, a portion is general fund, or excuse me, a portion is wireless, and then there's also general fund. So we will continue to do that when we move to Chagrin Valley.
And how do you determine which portion is general fund versus wireless?
Most of the ratios had been set up in the past. There's some stipulations with wireless. Okay. For example, you can't use radios. So radios always have to come out of general fund. Staffing and salaries, those are mostly 100% wireless for the CCOM staff.
And on the 911, the wireless assistance fund, how much do we anticipate receiving on an annual basis?
Currently, this past year, we've received approximately 2.8 million. In years prior, it was around 3.2 million.
And that's all based on the number of cell phones in the county, correct?
That's correct.
Because it's 25 cents per month per phone, per
That's
cell
correct.
phone. And how much of that allocation, I'm sorry, how much of that, the 2.8 million, will be dedicated to CCOMs? Is that 100%?
Approximately $600,000 annually is the City of Cleveland contract for our wireless calls that comes in front of this committee next week. Other than that, the remainder is 100%. So the 2.2 million is with CCOMs.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Harrison.
Thank you. Councilman Greenspan covered a few questions about what is this 2015, 2016, or where actually the money comes from. I do have a question. Does this affect the money that we did not send for the South Euclid, Cleveland Heights group who wanted to, this has nothing, no bearing on that at all? Okay, thank you.
No, they're going to be in good shape. Yeah. But it's going to take them, we anticipate maybe a year before they get everything, Cleveland Heights, Shaker Heights.
That's a fair estimate. A year.
So about it. So that's kind of lockbox for them. Yeah. Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, first, congratulations to Ms. Carney on your appointment.
Thank you, Councilman.
And my question, I know that as we prepared the biennial budget, that there were assumptions worked into that budget document as to how this process would play out for 2015, 2016, and 2017. And my question is whether the agreement that's put forward here is entirely consistent with what's in the budget document, or whether there's anything that has changed since what we knew then.
No, it's consistent with the budget document. We've been very careful to try to ensure that it stays within the budget that was presented.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? No? No one else? All good? Is there any need to move this forward? I see January 1.
Yes, there is.
And we don't have enough meetings, I don't think, in December. So if we could, if I could have a motion for resolution 2015-0255 to the full council under suspension of the rules.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you very much. When do you anticipate this will be? In February it'll be up and running, so we could take a tour through there in March maybe?
Sure, the design documents have already been completed, so as soon as this hopefully gets approved next week, they're ready to start, moving. So we're hoping to have CCOMs move into the center in February, early March. And then so we can completely vacate the Sterling building immediately thereafter with all of our equipment.
Okay.
The remainder.
If you could contact our office and invite all the council and staff that wish to go, it'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if they know the answer in regards to the Sterling building. So is that the last stuff that we have in regards to the Sterling building? Or we would still need to continue that lease?
I'm not sure about the answer to that question.
Okay.
I could actually speak to it. The Sterling building, so we're moving the data center down to Columbus. Once that's out and CCOMS is out, we have some old obsolete furniture and equipment that's over there that we need to get rid of. And then my understanding is there's like a closet amount of space that we need that we'll be leasing from Blue Bridge that's being done through the IT department. But that'll be the only thing that we have left at the Sterling building. And that's ongoing because that's just, they need access to the fiber there or.
The optic fiber, that's the only part. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution 2015-0256.
Resolution number 2015-0256, authorizing a contract with Oriana House in the amount not to exceed $1,256,030 for day programming services in connection with the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction Community Corrections Act Probation Improvement and Incentive Grant Program for the period 7/1/2015 through 6/30/2017.
Corrections Planning Board. We're recommending this contract with Oriana House. It's 100% funded through Community Corrections Act Probation Improvement Incentive Funding. This particular contract will service no less than 400 offenders through Oriana House for day programming. Within day programming, there are 6 discrete tracks of services. Some include substance abuse, some workforce development or education, some therapeutic, cognitive behavioral treatment, some a combination of multiple different pieces. The payment for this is on a fee-for-service per unit basis. Once a client receives a set number of hours of service per year or per week, they then get paid for that week's worth rate for that particular track. 25% of the funding that's incorporated in this is incentive. If the vendor meets the parameters and the qualifications in the contract, they will then get that additional funding.
Questions from the committee? Ma'am.
Through the chair to Mr. Murphy, do we pay, since it's 100% by the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation, do we pay upfront cost and then get reimbursed?
We pay the upfront costs, then we do draw down the funding on a quarterly basis from the state.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, real quick, I remember before, when I first came to this council, there was an issue with Oriana House providing services, and some individuals there complaining that they were not receiving treatment or was a delay in the treatment. I know we had the discussion before with some of the common police court judges who were made aware of that. Has there been any more discussion about that, whether those acts have continued or that have subsided? Is that still an issue at the Oriana House?
I'm trying to remember. I recall that.
Yeah.
I thought there was an agreement, and that's when the chief judge was Judge First, and I think that they had met and they had come to a settlement agreement that everything was okay.
Okay. I just didn't recall hearing anything else about that. I just wondered where we were. Was that settled? Was that worked out? Has every operations been what they believe it should be?
She did report back the next time she was in front of us that they had come to an agreement and an understanding.
Okay.
And they weren't negative any way of the services. I think it was just a glitch in the system and the way in which scheduling was going on.
Okay. All right.
Any further questions? No. Is Oriana House, are they staying there? I went by there recently. A for sale sign was there?
Oriana House has 3 different buildings on East 55th. They have moved the day programming to the Goodwill property at the corner of Huff and East 59th, maybe 3 or 4 blocks away. And the basis for that was to expand, I believe, halfway house beds in preparation for some changes that happened in the state law and some offenders that may be coming out in January should they earn a contract from the state for that particular program.
Okay. Any other questions? Ma'am, were you done? And I see this is July of this year. Is there any reason it took this long to get to us?
Well, Councilman, the state fiscal year, as you know, began on July 1. The Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, however, they received their funding appropriation, put this out for competitive bid to the counties in late July. We applied for it. We were ultimately brought into a negotiation with them. We had to adjust our request for funding a little bit. And ultimately, it was awarded. Once the award process was completed, it went through the county process, which, as you all are probably aware, took a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I'm not worried on the other end. I'm worried on our end if we're holding things up. And that's been a problem since we've been here and even before us. We're trying to streamline that, which doesn't seem to be working rather well.
On this one, I would say December 1 from July 1, we're probably internally 60% of the problem.
That's not good. I just, this is our fifth year and we still have these problems, and we hear it. That's why I wanted to know if it was on the other side, but it's our side again.
This one, it was definitely both because of the RFP process once the funding became available. But it took time on this side as well. We had everything into the state and everything approved, and probably by mid-September where we knew we had the funds.
Okay, well, hearing nothing further, I'll accept the motion for resolution 2015-0256 to the full council. Second reading, adoption under suspension.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We hear an update in regards to how we can chip away at that 60%.
Well, that's mechanics that I will throw to the administration. We're certainly part of that, no question about it. I think part of it was we were so aggressive earlier on in making sure every I was dotted and every T was crossed. But I think we're at a point now where we should be able to accelerate, especially contracts like this, through quicker. So it's going to have to be I don't know what committee that's going to go to, or I'll talk to the president and have him talk to the administration on potential fixes. So we're part of the problem, that's for certain. Resolution 2015-0257.
Resolution number 2015-0257, making awards on requisition number 33495 to various providers in the total amount not to exceed $1,015,000 for psychologist services at the Juvenile Court Diagnostic Clinic for the period 1/1/2016 through 12/31/2017.
Ms. Lipman.
Good afternoon.
Bright as sunshine. Somehow your ray of sunshine got through those clouds, and here you are.
That's the way I roll.
Oh, we couldn't be happier.
Nor I. Good afternoon. Karen Lippman with Juvenile Court. This is an amendment to our master agreement for our clinicians at our diagnostic clinic at the court. This amendment is actually just adding the second year of funding to the agreement. So everything remains the same in the agreement, with the only changes that we had 3 clinicians that were on the original agreement that have since dropped off, and a psychometrist who has dropped off the agreement. The reason that the 3 clinicians dropped off is because the first year the law department waived their commercial and general liability insurance provision. And this year, they said that they would not waive that, so it was too costly for them to independently purchase the insurance. And then the psychometrist didn't meet the minimum requirements.
Okay.
Oh, I take it back. I made a mistake. This is not an amendment. This is not an amendment. My mistake. This is not an amendment. We just did an RFQ. This is the first year of the agreement. Okay. So, my apologies. I made that mistake.
That's all right. Any questions from the committee? Ma'am?
So in the previous agreement, since this is not an amendment, we had the 3 clinicians and the optometrist?
The psychometrist.
Psychometrist, okay.
Who's basically a master's level psychologist who does some testing So yes, they were, those 3 clinicians that dropped out were part of it. So the first, they're finishing up a 2-year agreement or contract, a master agreement with them, and the law department had waived that commercial general liability insurance requirement, and then this year we had a lot of back and forth, and the law department said no, they wouldn't waive it. So they did work with the clinicians that are on here to help them get a good price on that insurance, but many of these clinicians are sort of independent contractors and they're just sort of in business for themselves. So they had to sort of weigh the cost versus how much work that they're actually doing at the court.
How does that impact the diagnostic clinic?
It actually does have a pretty significant impact because there is a backlog of assessments that need to be done, and there are a number of assessments actually that we do for Department of Children and Family Services as well. We're actually have a RFQ that's out that I think is closing this week to add on some more master's level psychometrists and social workers who could help do some of the backlog testing. And we're hoping that will help us bring down a little bit of the backlog. And as well, we're always looking out there for more PhD level psychiatrists,
but if we
psychologists, to work with us.
So if we're looking to bring on more clinicians, how are their insurance or malpractice insurance going to get paid? If we waive,
they all purchase their own insurance.
They purchase their own.
That's the problem, is so that so we had this insurance requirement that was waived previously, and then this year they said, no, we won't waive it. And so then they went out and said, well, okay, we have malpractice insurance, we have this. They had to get the CGL insurance, and they said, you know what, I don't want to pay the extra expense.
So those 3 clinicians that were dropped off didn't have their own, basically.
They didn't have that kind of insurance. They had their malpractice and their professional liability insurance, but there was another commercial general liability insurance that they would have to purchase. That would be an additional kind of insurance that they would have to purchase.
And that's required by who?
The law department.
Okay, to have that.
For these folks to have it. So like I said, 2 years ago, when I was up here doing this, they had waived that requirement.
Right.
So they all have malpractice insurance and they have professional liability insurance. They actually even, I think, had to show automobile insurance, but they didn't have to show that. So this year they said, no, you know what, we waived it 2 years ago, we're not going to waive it again. And so these folks that are on here have all purchased that insurance.
Okay. Questions still in my mind about that. Go ahead and open it up for someone else.
Mr. Germana?
I'm noticing vast differences between different doctors have got 4 times as much as others. How is it determined who gets what?
So first of all, this is a master agreement, and the reason we do that is because if one clinician they get paid only for the assessments they complete, and part of the RFQ process is they have to state how much do they actually want to work. So some only come in 1 day a week, some come in 3 days a week, some come in a half day. So it has to do with the amount of assessments they're doing. Okay. And then the master agreement allows us, though, if somebody says, I'm only going to be here 1 day a week, and all of a sudden they're coming in 2 or 3 days a week, that we can adjust those amounts without having to come and do an amendment each time, similar to the way we do our residential agreements. So that's why, so we sort of estimate based on current usage, how much, how often people are coming and how many assessments they can get completed of the different types, and we sort of make our best guesstimate as how much, and that's why they're different. So some do a lot more work for the court, and some are only here like 1 day a week.
So they're deciding how much they
correct. They only get paid for the assessments they complete. So if they show up and there's no work, they won't get paid for that. But we have a little bit of a backlog, so there's always work to do.
Mr. Greenspan.
Thank you. So obviously we've been providing these services for a number of years. How have our past year costs compared to what is presented here?
So the contract is, we've been pretty much on track for $507,500 annually. That's pretty much where we are spending. We did, for this agreement, we did actually increase the unit rate because the court determines the unit rate that they will get paid. And so we did increase it by, I think, $5, $10. We increased it by $10.
Per unit?
Yes.
And how do you determine per hour? I'm sorry.
We actually looked at what was being paid by the psychologists downtown at the general division, and we looked at how long it's been since we've raised their rate, which has been probably over 10 years, and made a determination, plus having to purchase the extra insurance. We wanted to, because many of these clinicians that signed on were actually ready to not sign on again. So it was sort of a way to sort of say, all right, well, we'll increase the rate. I know they've been clamoring about that because that's not a rate that they set. That's a rate that they come in and we say we're going to pay.
What is the current rate?
Current rate is 70. I think it's 70. I can check. I think it's like 73 an hour.
And it's being increased to 83 an hour?
Yes.
Okay. And is that increase itself, take the dust off my calculator. So that's about a 14% increase. But that 14% increase obviously is less than the difference between 507 that you're currently paying versus $1,015,000.
The $1,015,000 is for 2 years.
That's the 2 years. Okay. Got it. Okay. So then are you actually reducing hours then? I thought you said there was an increase.
We increased the rate.
Right, but I thought I heard you say there was a backlog of there's more work.
There's more work, but they're only going to work the hours that they choose to work because they are all in private practice.
But if they're currently realizing 507 at 73 an hour, you're raising it to 83 an hour, and you're acknowledging there's more caseload, then are we setting ourselves up for an amendment down the road?
I don't think so because we've got 3 less clinicians and a psychometrist that are off, that aren't on here. So the clinicians that are on here, they're probably going to work at the same level that they're working as far as the number of hours they're putting in. They're going to get paid higher.
So how do we knock off the backlog?
By hopefully bringing in these master's level who get paid at a much lower rate. Because these are all PhD level clinicians. So if we bring in master's level, I think at $25 or $35 an hour, they can get a lot of the backlog done.
So some of these folks here who may have an expectation of being paid $54,305.72, it's your expectation to bring in, all right, I'm going to make the jump and statement here, lesser qualified individuals that will eat away at some of their rate. These are all PhDs, and you're going to bring in master's level people.
Right, which they can't do the same level of work, but they can do. So what they will do is they'll maybe perform some of the testing and some of the other work so that the number of hours that you actually need a PhD to complete that assessment process, that whole package, will be less hours per family.
So when somebody sees an amount of $206,000, they shouldn't expect to.
They all know that they only get paid for the work that they do.
Okay. Question regarding the law department's apparent unilateral decision to waive qualifications. I'm assuming that's under risk management's purview.
Exactly.
Under what ordinance is that authority granted to the law department to unilaterally make a decision to reduce qualifications?
Well, this would go back to Councilman Gallagher's mention of the process and getting contracts through. Is one of the things that you have to do is you have to have approvement on any contract from the law department of the contracting process, of the before you even put an RFP out there, and the insurance levels that are required. So before you can even release an RFP or an RFQ to the public, it has to have that law department stamp of approval. So they're the ones who look at that and say, no, you need this here, and it won't get released unless you have those levels of insurance in there. So then the same process then. So when we went through the whole process and had a collection of clinicians to move forward with, we actually had a number of conversations with folks at risk management in the law department. Probably we had a number of requests to waive the agreement, to waive that level of insurance. Again, we've had probably at least 2 conference calls with them because we were really concerned, and they would not budge, and we could not move forward with the contract unless we.
But we've had other instances outside of this contract where we've had requirements, insurance requirements, bonding requirements, that the law department's not had the flexibility to waive.
Well, they waived it 2 years ago.
I know, but I'm trying to understand under whose authority do they have the ability to unilaterally waive? And that's why I wasn't looking at you. I was looking more at the law department, because we've had that issue in contracting where we've had performance bonds, other types of bonds that have prevented contractors from soliciting business to the county. But those provisions were not waived yet. We're waiving them here.
I think when Ms. Lippen's using the word waive, it's actually the risk management department sets the insurance requirements for RFPs that go out and determines, what level of insurance. We have kind of a standard that is typical. Sometimes with smaller vendors, and depending on the nature of the contract, after the fact, when we're entering into a contract with a vendor, if they ask us to reduce the level of insurance, risk will take a look at it and see if it would be appropriate to do that.
But that's after the RFP or RFP's gone out?
Correct.
Well, but then if you set a risk management level, say of $100,000, and there are providers out there that say, I only carry $50,000, so I'm not even going to bother to apply, yet somebody gets it or is awarded at 100 and comes back and says, I really need it reduced to 50, and the risk management reduces it to 50, then aren't we providing a disservice to other vendors who didn't bid because they thought the requirements were too high?
That is possible, and it's something we could talk about with risk management.
I mean, I looked at Mr. German. I mean, you're kind of the expert in this, doesn't it? You've raised the issue about performance bonds in the past. Doesn't this? I think there's a problem here.
Yeah, the rule should be made before,
Right,
not after. I mean, because then you're
changing the rules. You're changing the opportunity for people to participate. Especially if Mr. Jones was here, I know he'd jump on the SB, FB, MB requirements here and say, well, look, smaller businesses or minority businesses or female businesses don't apply because the insurance requirements are too high, but you're waiving them for somebody else because they asked. So I think we've got a problem, not with you. This isn't with you. I think we've got a problem. Look to the administration to provide us with a solution. If the clerk will make a note of this, to please have administration follow up on this policy. I didn't mean to.
No, it's fine.
Thank you.
Anything further? Yeah.
Through the chair to Ms. Lippman, just wanted to follow up. Will the master's level individuals require the same level of insurance?
Yes.
Okay, so they'll need that, whatever.
Yes, and we're actually, this is something that we're concerned about because we know we have to offer this level of insurance, that they have to provide this level of insurance, and we're looking to get sort of the equivalent of 3 full-time folks to come in. So and one of the things we're looking for is perhaps a student who's studying at the PhD level who already has their master's degree, who maybe can come in and provide maybe 10 hours a week of work. They may not be in a position to purchase this additional level of insurance.
So we're still in
but we don't know because the RFP hasn't closed yet, so we don't know who's applied yet. But it is something that we've actually internally spoke about and said, geez, I hope this doesn't scare folks away. But I mean, it is for, for that type of person who could come in and really be beneficial to the court, and maybe they only have 10 hours a week to provide. But if we can get a couple of those folks to come in, that would be great for the court to get some of the backlog done especially, and to bring down our total expenses. But we're hoping it doesn't become a deterrent to have that level of commercial and general liability insurance.
So how much is that insurance? Because in one end, you're saving money on not having the PhD. You're paying them at a lesser rate, but you're still requiring them to have that same level of insurance that they have to buy out of pocket.
They have to buy out of pocket. So I don't remember. Do you remember how much? 2,500. What was it? So they did get a price, and the law department was very helpful in working with some of our clinicians, and it was about $257 annually additional. But remember, they also have professional liability insurance, and they also have malpractice insurance. And now we've actually been hearing about having some sex offender malpractice insurance for anyone who's working with kids, which would be an additional insurance. And they're actually stating that that is over $1,000 a year annually. So I don't remember the exact amounts, but so the insurance levels are going up. And so when you have these independent folks that are in private practice, it does become not so cost effective for them to do this work. A lot of these folks, they have their own private practice and they make a lot more money than $73 an hour in their private practices. And a lot of them really just enjoy coming down to the court. And sort of keeping in touch with sort of that level of family and youth work.
I turned it down, I swear. All right, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
Anything further? And I see this is January 1 again. So I'll accept a motion for resolution 2015-0257 to the full council. Your second reading suspension.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Miscellaneous business, anyone? Sure. Mr. Greenspan?
Just two pieces. One, although our clerk, Chrissy's not here, it's her birthday today. As customary, I like to call people out and wish them happy birthday. And also, today's the 10-year anniversary of the city of Sandy Springs in Georgia. So I want to mention that. I will be traveling down this weekend to celebrate.
Under.
Just get back.
And I asked under subpoena?
Yeah.
How about a shout out to Ann Germana for putting up with Mr. Germana for 47 years as of yesterday.
And we'll all go play that number tonight. Okay. Other public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Okay. We're adjourned.
And regard on